video is brought to you by Letsynthesize Academy, the #1 place for practice-oriented courses for serious music producers.
Hey, Dan Larson here, and look, I remade Svdden Death and Pandorum drums just like you guys asked. Let me show you, it's so exciting. So this is Crusade from Svdden Death. Original. Mine. And I also remade the Sellout from Svdden Death. Look. And the original. And last week I was busy with the Eclipse from Pandorum, and I also remade the drums too. Look. Original. And besides these, I have 5 more, so overall 8 very cool drum kits. You can download the loops for free, but if you want to grab the whole project with the drum racks and stuff, you need to check my Patreon, link is below. But now let me show you a few cool stuff how I made these drums. Okay, so I'm just going to show you a few tips how to make your drums, especially your Tearout Dubstep drums, fatter, and how you process your hits to cut through the mix, especially the claps and the snares. Okay, so let's go to my favorite one, and this is the Crusade because it is so punchy and so unique. So first of all, what I did here is I basically just cut out the drums from the original, so this is what I play under the drums. And this is the original. Okay, so I'm using 3 layers, a regular clap sample, or a clap layer, a noise layer on top of that, and the snare layer to add the punch and the transients to this whole thing. Okay, let me see the clap. Now the clap is a very dumb sound on itself. Let me show it to you without all the process. It's just basically a transient and the noise layer that I made in Serum. Okay, there are 3 things you need to keep in mind when you want to process your claps to cut through the mix. The first thing is an overdrive and an EQ and a frequency shifter to shape the sound if you want. Now let me show it to you what I did here. So first I added an overdrive. And of course an OTT can pull up the frequencies, but this time I decided to crank up the time so I won't get that very heavy noisy tails that, you know, OTT always generates. I also added a drum bus to add some more punch and more compression and distortion to it. And this is very cool here because a frequency shifter is a very handy tool to form your sound in a very different way. So we went from this clap to this clap. And this is the place and this is the time when an EQ plays a very important role. So this is very important to cut the frequencies that you don't need and boost that very clappy kind of frequency at around 1 and 2K. So first I went to this EQ before the overdrive. As you can see, I boosted at 1.11K. I chopped off the very lows, the very highs, and some annoying noisy frequencies at around 5K. Okay, I use an overdrive, and because the overdrive boosted very high frequencies, very low frequencies and stuff like that, it was really necessary to add another EQ and another boost at around 1.8K. And basically we are done with the clap, although I also added a reverb and a glue compressor to add some more punch to it. Okay, so you may ask me, why did I add the noise layer if I cut the very highs with this EQ? And it is simply because it sounds very different if you boost the high frequencies or use a noise layer on top of that. So let's add the noise layer, and I used Operator for it. It is very simple. The only thing you need to keep in mind is the length of the release to match the length of the clap. So don't make it too short or too long, just, you know, try to find the sweet spot. Now I cut the very lows at around 1K. I added a reverb and another overdrive, as I stated before, it's very important, and an EQ to chop off the very lows and the very highs, and some annoying frequencies at around 5 and 6K. And last, the punch. the snare that needs to be filtered at around 700 Hz, you know, to chop off the very lows that this clap does not really need, only the transient and that punchy part of that. And I also chopped off the tail of the snare, so basically this is all you need, the transient and some very tiny amount of the low end. And now let me show you another example how important it is to add overdrive to your claps if you want to make it cut through the mix. So this clap is a very nice clap, but let me show it to you without the process. So this is the clap on itself. So first let me add an overdrive. And it is already now a lot cooler. Let's add an OTT. I use the frequency shifter also. And I also added a drum bass to add some more transients to it. And the two EQs that I already explored for you. And another EQ to the end. So now you can hear how important it is to add overdrive to your claps. The difference is very audible in this loop, where I have this clap without the overdrive but with some overdrive. It cuts through the mix a lot better, and I also set the bandpass filter at around 1.1K. You know that this is that clappy frequency. Okay, so let me talk about the process on the drums I love to do and I love to put, and that is the drum bass. And some of you may disagree with me because the drum bass has a very unique character and probably you don't want to add it to your drums. Now, it is very cool. I actually really like it because the transient shaper, this knob, is very awesome, but you need to keep in mind one thing. If you drive the drum bass very heavily, so if you have very high input level, it can easily distort your sound, and basically you can't do too much to it except if you put a utility tool before the drum bass and pull back the volume. But I have figured out a very different workaround and I think it works a lot better because when I designed these drums, I cranked up the transient and it sounded so well, but I let the trim at 0 decibels. So listen. It's just very heavily saturated. So I suggest you to pull the trim back when you experience this issue instead of adding a utility tool, because with this you pull back the sustain and the decay except the attack. So the transient shape will be still working, but you decrease the very sensible frequencies by pulling the trim back, so your drums won't distort but still have very nice transients. Now, about the kicks and the hi-hats, you don't have too much work for that. I never process my hats very heavily, only some EQing, and the kick drum should have a little EQing and maybe some transient shaping, and this is all. You need to find a good sounding kick and just put it in and make some adjustments with an EQ, and basically this is all, or you can play with the transposition. So for example, in this kit I cranked back the transposition on the kick by 2 semitones. Okay, so these were my tips, and don't forget that you can download all these loops in loop format for free, but if you want to have the full racks with the one shots and the process and the stuff, check my Patreon and you will find these very cool drums. Okay, I was Dan Larson, see you guys next time, peace!